Good morning or good evening, wherever you are, Startup Boston audience. Hello, hello. My name is Allison, and I will be kicking us off today. I am from the Startup Boston organization team. What I would love to see is for everyone to just put into the chat over yonder, where are you dialing in from today? Are you even in Boston? Last panel, we had somebody from China. And that was pretty cool. So where are you dialing in from today? Oh, we got a Boston. What's up, Corey? Okay, we got a Somerville. Good morning, Katie. Just Corey and Katie. All right, we got a Charlestown. That's what's up. These are all Boston area places for those who are not local. Dallas, okay. Dorchester. Hey, Camilla. Hey, Cliff. Okay, we got a Colorado. We got some New Hampshire. Cliff, I got to say with Framingham, when I first moved to the Boston area, and I'm a native Floridian, I saw somebody was talking about FSU, and the Floridian in me, who is also a Florida State grad, got real excited to find another Seminole up here in New England. Lo and behold, they went to Framingham State, and I was immediately disappointed. So for those who are coming up to Northeast from Florida, don't make my mistake. Florida State, Framingham State, two very different universities. Yes, I am not a Ram. I am a Seminole. Sorry, Nikki. No offense. Seminoles. What's up? Although our football team is doing really badly. All right, so we've got some locations in the chat now. Before we hand it over to our lovely moderator, Janie, I would love to hear, what is your role within a startup? Are you in the customer success function? Are you a people ops pro? Are you a founder? Are you a VC? Are you a student who knows none of these jobs? I want to know. What do you do? Okay, we got some marketing people. We got some customer success people. Customer experience. That's what's up. I mean, that makes sense for this track. Drop into the chat. What is your role in the startup world? Maybe you're startup curious. You're like, I don't know. Do I move from the Amazons and Wayfairs of the world to like a really tiny growing company? That's very exciting. I've made that switch. Awesome. We got some people ops folks. We got some ops folks. We got product. Awesome. Awesome. Well, before I hand it over to Janie, thank you so much for coming out to Startup Boston Week. As I said before, my name's Allison. I'm an organizer for this event. And now on my screen, if I remember to share it, let's see. Yes, here we go. So what events are playing now? In this panel, you are currently in Assembling the Avengers, Building and Scaling a CX Dream Team. If you are meaning to be on the I Did It My Way, Should You Go Solo as a Founder, you are in the wrong session. And so you're going to want to click Agenda and then find your way over to the panel where you're hoping to be right now. This is our Avengers Dream Team of the CX world. We've got some Iron Man references. We've got some Captain Marvel references. Maybe we'll make a Shang-Chi reference. Who knows? But that is where you are right now. Okay. And one other thing I will ask you all to do is while we navigate or wait for people to navigate around. I need more coffee. Y'all, it's empty. Just as a reminder, we love questions. So please, please, please use that Q&A tab on the far right of your screen to submit any questions that you may have during the session. That's why we created this conference, learning. So please share your questions. And with that, I will toss it over to the lovely Janie.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. Good morning. Happy Monday as well. Thanks for being here so early on, 9 a.m.-ish. I'm excited to kind of kick this off. My name is Janie. I am a customer experience manager at Spot & Tango, which is based in New York City. And so a little bit about me with my company, and my role. Just wanted to give you a brief intro, and then I'll pass it along to the rest of our speakers here today. And so, as I mentioned, I worked in customer experience at Spot & Tango. The size of our support team currently ranges at like 30 to 40. And so a little bit more about me. I actually have a background in psychology, and then after leaving school, I thought a lot about what I wanted to do. And, at the core of it, I really loved working with people, and being in customer experience just seemed very natural for me. And then after that, now the focus is a lot on, how to build that best customer experience to deliver an above and beyond, service for everybody. And so that's a little bit about me. And I will pass it off to Ben.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Super excited for this panel and we and all the rest of the speakers here. So I currently work over at AppQs. AppQs is a Boston-based startup. Although we are all fully remote now, I'm currently over in Quincy, Mass, but we do have team members that are all across the US and also international as well. My current role, I'm currently a support engineering manager, as well as running the support team as the head of support. Our team's a fairly small team right now. It's just 4 people, including myself, but we do have team members in different countries and different places. So I've got a team member in Portugal. I've got a team member that's over in Oakland. And I also have a new team member that's over in the Philippines now. As one of the things as well with my particular role, like I mentioned, I'm a support engineering manager as well as running the support team. And with that, I actually come from a little bit of a technical background. So I had been doing some technical work in the past. I did some freelance work, and then I joined AppQs specifically to build out the support engineering team. And then I took over the support role running the actual team itself. So that's been a totally interesting experience. And then with our actual team, we do B2b support. So AppQs is a product that people install into their application to help people understand how to use the product, drive feature adoption and things like that. And so we do a lot of B2B support, but our team also supports internal users. So that means that we also support our customer success team. We collaborate with our product team and our engineering team, and it's really interesting. I'm going to pass it over to Zoma.
All right, hey y'all, my name is Izami Buchlam. I work at Wistia, which is a video hosting platform made for B2B marketers, based here in Boston, specifically over in Central Square. Our team is about 18. We have a director, Stacy Justino, who actually just spoke in the last panel, as well as 2 customer support managers, and then we have a few frontline folks, and then a couple senior folks as well on that team. My background, I come from an operations background. I worked at a previous startup where I focused on a little bit of support, largely operations, and then slowly started to focus more on support. And so here at Wistia, my primary focus is support. And we do kind of a little bit of a combination of kind of standard everyday support. And then also we do fairly intensive technical support as well. But my background is kind of primarily focused in general support and not so much the tech side, but slowly starting to gain that skill set as well. All right, I'll pass it off to our last speaker.
Hi, everyone. My name is Rojay Lee Jean Bay. I'm currently working for a company called Propel that is based in Brooklyn, actually. I'm the head of customer experience over at Propel. Our support team, actually, we just did a really, really massive scale up. So right now, our support team is about a little over 100 people. We've got a lot of people based in the Philippines and some of our team members based in El Salvador. And then at HQ, which we call anyone based in the US, we've got 4 people on our support team, and that number is growing. So by the end of the year, we're probably going to be about double that size, which is really exciting. My background is also in operations. I previously worked in an operations management rotation program, so kind of a jack of all trades across different departments. And then in the last 3-4 years, I've been working with various startups as they launch, primarily in the personal care space. So worked for Harry's, helped launch the Flamingo brand, and then worked with a few other personal care or CPG startups in the New York City area. Currently based in Atlanta for ? Who knows? Our team is remote, flexible, or pretty much remote all the way. So our team is growing all over the country and the world, I guess. And then our support team, we primarily talk to our direct users. And so a little bit about Propel's product. We are a fintech app, and we help low-income Americans check their EBT balances via an app. We recently launched a debit card product, so now we've got 2 products. And so my team primarily services customers who are looking for our banking services.
Great.
That's it.
Wow, thank you so much for everybody's intros. Really, I'm really excited to have everyone here today and just kind of share discussions a lot. We have one question in the chat now, but I will go ahead and just read it out loud. So just to get it out, I think it's a good question to have before we start all of our discussions. And Rebecca asks, how do you define CX? What is included, support, anything else? And so I guess to just for us as we further along, wanted to align on what that means for all of us as we have kind of align on this aspect of CX and what that means in our respective roles at our companies.
Yeah, totally. So I guess I'll kick off. So over at AppQ's, our CX team actually has a couple of different teams that fall under it. So we've got the support team that falls under the CX team. We've got our customer success team that falls under the CX team. And we also have our professional services team. And professional services is kind of like our onboarding products as well as our implementation manager. They fall under our professional services team. And so with my role as head of support and head of support engineering, I roll up to my VP of CX. And one of my peers is our head of, I believe he's actually senior head or something similar of customer success.
And then over at Propel, so our function is still very brand new. And so we're still actually working out what that really means. Previously, it was really focused on our users. I think for us, it's always about our users. We service over 4 million people. And so for us, we think of our customers as like, our customers are often interacting with products that are poorly built. How do we create a better product for them? And how do we become more available for them? And so right now, our customer experience team is actually split up into two, and it's by product. In the future, we're going to be one big umbrella CX team, one for debit. And then I'll have a peer that works specifically with the EBT app. And on the EBT side, what you'll see is like there's no real like CX team. It's a lot of like product operations managers and product managers. But then on our side, we have tons of agents because we have to talk to customers on the phone, and we have to be able to like quickly get their issues responded to. And like there are all these regulations that we also have to make sure that we are compliant with. And so it looks a little bit different for us, and it's primarily associates. But in the future, it's probably going to look a bit more like product operations, customer service, customer experience, and then research and insights.
Yeah, and then over at Wistia, ours is we kind of just did a little bit of a reorg, but as far as customer experience, it's kind of for us it equals our customer support, we call it customer happiness, plus our customer success teams, and those two teams make up our customer experience. But they are separate teams because they serve different roles. Our customer support team is primarily support. People come in, ask questions, we do our best to answer those questions. Customer success is a little bit more focused on the overall customer journey and taking customers' inputs and insights and trying to solve those at like either a contract level or something along those lines, or funneling those insights and working with product to see, okay, here are some of the issues our customers have, and how can we start to either adjust our product roadmap or get these to our product managers to figure out, okay, is this something that we can do, adjust, et cetera, et cetera. So those two functions work fairly closely together, but they are slightly separate teams. Well, they are separate teams.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your input. I definitely agree as well. I think there's different components of it, but the focus point being on users, customer facing and improving what that experience looks like, that layers, support, and another part of it is insights as well. And with everybody watching today, I definitely encourage you to ask us more questions as we further along. And so I'm going to get started on our panel discussion today. And our first question being that should you be building your own CX team or outsourcing? What do you see as the pros and cons of each?
This is an interesting one because I've worked in a few different areas, but I think It depends on the context of your business in a big way, primarily because if you're doing something that is like really technical focused, it's harder to outsource something versus if you're thinking about, say, you call into FedEx or Verizon or something. A lot of those teams are outsourced because there's kind of a little bit lower of a barrier to entry. Some companies tend to follow like decision trees for making decisions and going down the customer support path and answering people's questions. But for example, at Wistia, I don't think that would work that well, primarily because we have a really, really large number of questions that our customers ask, and we have to tailor a lot of our specific experiences to that specific customer. And so a lot of that is live troubleshooting with multiple people on the team, based in the office here in Boston. And so we found it a lot easier for us to kind of have our team here, build upon that team, and also have a little bit of a smaller team, because we need to train people over time to make them like really, really, really good with the product and be able to use their judgment to handle a number of different situations. Because on any given day, someone will have 8 different types of questions that they may have never seen before. And so we don't necessarily have specific answers pre-built to every question. What we tend to do is train people really well how to use the product, how to have good judgment. And then from that, we go and we kind of, I don't want to say let people loose, but we let people use that judgment and use that technological experience to be able to handle a number of different situations. So that's kind of the first part, but I will pass it over to anyone else who has kind of a little bit of a different take or a similar take.
So I have a very similar take. It really depends on the product. I think if you have a really technical product, it is very difficult to bring on an outsourcing team and train them on the product, and at least in a short amount of time. You should expect like a really long lead time on when that team is going to be traded up, because there's so many different factors. So if you're doing, it also depends where you outsource. So if you outsource in the US, it might be a little bit simpler depending on the nuance of the product and the nuance of like the industry that you're in. If you are outsourcing offshore, it really depends. And so for us, like we do have a lot of pre-prepared answers for a lot of questions, but there's a lot of nuance with our product, not necessarily because of the product, but more so because we're serving low-income Americans, and there's this entire system of social welfare that even I think for many Americans is very complicated to try to understand. And of course, like we're working with the government here, so we have to decode a lot of information. And for us, luckily, like I said, we had 2 kind of separate teams currently, and we have a team that purely focuses on getting all of the government insights, distilling it down, and then putting it in the app in different locations so that people will have essentially a knowledge base on all the happenings that are going on with the government and what things actually mean to their particular lives. And so from my experience, I would say trying to teach that to a 2L English speaker has been very, very difficult, because there's so much nuance, but there's also so much of it that's so factual that you can't really just like have a playbook and understand like what is the ATM fee, or can I use this in this country? Can I use my card in this particular country? But every now and then you'll get a customer who doesn't even have a question about our banking product, but they want to know about social welfare and benefits. And so we have to be able to create the right resources and train that team over a very long period of time on understanding a very ever-changing and complex American social welfare system. So it really depends on your product. And also just like, what is the timeline that you have for your launch? How mature is your product? And how well does your product actually operate? And so for us, like, again, it's a technical product. So things change over time. With some companies that I've worked at, where we just sell a few different products, or our SKUs are just ever expanding, there's some level of like, this is going to be pretty finite, the type of questions and instances of questions that you see. But with technical products, it can vary so much.
Yeah. And then can I add one last thing?
Yeah.
And then I think both of us are kind of like on the same trajectory with our answers, but I also do think it is worth mentioning that outsourcing can be the right solution for some companies, because if you think about overall, like monetarily, how much can you spend on outsourcing versus building in house? If you think about the customer experience overall, if outsourcing lets you at the end of the day have a better customer experience, then outsourcing for you can be the right answer. But I think it just depends on the context of the company and a number of different things. So it's not to say that there's one right answer. You have to kind of look into your company and see all the other factors and then kind of make a decision based off of that.
Yeah, thank you so much, both of you, for your answers. And I do agree. I think there is an aspect of it where it's a strong pro that you can achieve a lot in a limited amount of time. Whereas with having your own in-house team, there are strengths that you can have, more expertise with the product, and be able to have a very dynamic team very quickly. And so definitely agree. We have one question in the chat now. Robert asks, how have you identified the customer pain points along their journey with companies? Provide an example of how you resolve such an issue.
So identifying customer pain points. So every time I start, I'll jump in if anybody objects, I'll stop. Anytime I kind of start working with a company, the first thing I try to go in and do is like really understand the product and list out in my mind, like if I'm the user, and in many cases, I'm not actually the customer, but in some cases I have been, what would be the questions that I would have about this product? What are all the ways that things can go wrong? And then I start creating a map of potential scenarios, as well as kind of a map of different categories so that I can start creating a reason code list. I usually do this probably in like a Google sheet or something and just list out questions. That's the first place that I start. What would be the questions I would have if I were the customer? And so that from there, I start categorizing and building out a reason code kind of list to think of potential customer pain points. This is a really great strategy for pre-launch products. If your product has already launched, you are in a great position because you actually have data. So you can go and listen to calls, listen to tickets, and start to identify themes. What's great about that is like you're not guessing too much. You're really, all the information is there and you just kind of have to synthesize it and break it down into ways that you can kind of summarize or group what some pain points are, as well as identify some of the potential stakeholders that can help you resolve some of these pain points for customers. I'll provide an example. I might come back on an example. I have several, but I'll try to come back on that second part of the question.
Yeah, and on my end, a lot of so as you were just pointing out, a lot when you have a launch product, a lot of times you can kind of have those conversations with customers, either where you're on a call with them or you're getting the feedback from a customer success manager or something similar, where you can say, this is what the person is trying to do. This is where they're running into a hurdle or barrier. A lot of times when I'm looking at it, I'm looking at what they're trying to do with the product. And I'm saying what's preventing them from being able to either figure out how to do that on their own or how to do that entirely. There is always a category of those that I kind of set aside and I say, this isn't our product right now. So, so that obviously will be passed on to the product team and stuff like that. But sometimes people are trying to do things that you just simply don't do as a product. And when you do run into a hurdle, that's one of those things where I prefer to be on the call with a customer. So that's one of the things that our support team will do is if somebody is running into an issue, and this is kind of like Uzoma mentioned, where the best thing you can do when somebody is really blocked is being on the call with them, because then you can see what they're doing and you can pick up extra cues in their behavior. Maybe they're selecting something that's making it so that things aren't visible. Maybe they're changing one of the parameters in a way that isn't the way that it's expecting to match. And so in those cases, then you can provide the education for the customer on the spot but then you can also pass along that feedback to the product team. So for example, with our application, you'll be creating different steps in a flow, and then sometimes you'll need to navigate to another page. And when you're adding that navigation step, there's a couple of different ways to do that. You can either click on a button, it brings up a menu and you can select to add navigation, or you can also select a little arrow that's in the corner. And a lot of people, they don't have the context of what those items mean yet, or how they can use those parameters. And so that's one of the things that we pass along to the product team, saying like, hey, people see these, but they don't know to interact with them. And once they are interacting with them, they don't have the full context of what to do. And so part of that is things that we can improve in a product, but also part of it is things that we can improve in documentation so that people are a little bit more clear once they actually are using that functionality.
Yeah. And a recent example of something we saw was, this is very recent, we're still actually in it. Our product is a debit card product and it's digital first, but you have the option to also request a physical card. The best data comes from customers directly. And so our BPO is constantly throwing in questions and alerting us of different issues that they're seeing. Something that we saw was like some customers maybe a month ago are not receiving their cards. So we already have, because we put together a pre-launch plan and identified some potential scenarios. So we already had kind of the right reason code tagging system set up for the scenario, because with anything shipping, there's always going to be some sort of delay at some point in your product life cycle. And unfortunately, we didn't expect it to happen that quickly, but we started hearing chatter from customers, started seeing a lot of our dashboards tick up with this particular reason code, like where card status, where in the world is my actual debit card, and started identifying specific dates, started asking more probing questions. And so when you start to see these trends pop up in any of your comms lines, and for us it was Slack, it was, okay, well, we've seen 5 of those already. That's kind of weird. Let's start asking, what date did the customer request the card? When was the card actually created? Are there any other patterns that we can see? Are we sure that the customer actually requested a card in the app? And how do we start communicating with engineering to see where we can check on that information, either from a back-end system that they can pull that data and give it to us, or put it in a dashboard that we never had before, because that wasn't something that we're tracking. So as you are in the midst of kind of some of these issues that come up, you start identifying trends and then start thinking of potential probing questions that could get you to a resolution, and then start alerting the right teams of, hey, we're seeing this issue. And for us, it was talking to engineering, getting more information, talking to our operations team and our vendor manager about just some of the very interesting things that we were seeing regarding the operational aspects of card delivery, and then continuing to track, as well as providing the right talking points to the team that's directly on the front line, so that we can start to communicate with customers about a potential issue, identify a potential solution. In our case, we had like several different solutions, and then kind of keep it moving from there.
I love that you had the codes and you'd kind of like run through those scenarios in advance.
Oh yeah. You start to get more specific too when these things actually come up, and you're like, all right, I'm gonna have to build 3 additional codes that are also within this like group and the subgroup. And there are like certain dates that we're seeing. So maybe we just like identify those folks separately and create cohorts.
Yes, great. Thank you so much. I'm just going to move forward to the next question, which here is, how do you determine the perfect size, team size and structure?
So I think my answer is going to be pretty boring. So for sizings, size of team, I always go to whoever is managing like the product forecast, like how I want to understand, like, how are we expected to grow? And I think too, it also really depends on your product, how mature it is. So if you have that data, you can actually just look at the rate at which people are contacting you relative to the size of like your customer base or the amount of orders that you're sending or the amount of transactions that are happening, and use that as a metric to kind of help predict what will potentially happen in the future as you grow. And so for me, I like to use these numbers and these data and combine forecasting metrics with like CX metrics to predict how much work we're going to have, and then estimate based on how much work I think we're going to have, how many people that would require to have us successfully hit all of our SLAs. In terms of the structure, I think that's going back to that previous question. It really just depends on your product, and it depends on the kind of like how technical is your product, how fast do you have to get a team started. I think when I started, it was all about like, let's have a fully in-house team. Let's get people who are essentially experts on like EBT benefits and the child tax credit and what's going on in the government. And they have interest in social impact and maybe understand finance really well as well. And then as we had to kind of switch gears really quickly, it was like, it is almost impossible. There's no time to really get that team on the ground fully based in the US. We need additional help to make our other growth goals happen. And so we ended up in kind of this flex situation, and we know we're going to oscillate from that in the coming year as our product matures and we start to understand our customer habits a bit more.
Yeah, on my team, it's so we're primarily just inbound email for the communication, and then we do outbound calls for customers. So that's essentially we're initiating the calls if we need to. So that's a very different situation than a lot of inbound calls. And so that gives us the benefit of being able to flex our time a lot. So that means that if there is additional volume, it just takes us more time to work through it. And so that means that as long as our SLAs are flexible enough, then we can get through and we can help out everybody properly. And as far as that goes, that makes it so that we can have a very small team that helps out a lot of people. But one of the things that's always important for me with any of the teams I'm working on is to make sure that you have teams that feel like teams. So you feel like you've got other people that you're working with and you've got people that you can trust for answers, but also have people that can kind of like review and support and help the other team members grow. And so for that, that's one of those things where I've typically found that it's good for those individual teams to be like maximum of 6 or 7 people. And the other thing that I like to do is I like to have people have their own specialties, either within the team or as a different team. So at AppQs, we've got our regular support team that's kind of all of the inbound questions. And with that, we kind of encourage the team members to specialize in things, either documentation or community or things like that. And then we also have our support engineering team. And with the support engineering team, the goal with that is to be able to have people that have those very specialized technical skills, so that when people are dealing with more complex situations, either potential installs, conflicts with their apps and stuff like that, then there's somebody that can speak the right language and can get to the bottom of the problem, or at least can work with the engineers to help resolve it. So that's for me is minimizing sizing, because that has been one of the main goals for the company right now, is to make sure that we're very efficient with our team, but also to kind of align people in a way that they can support each other.
Yeah, and the only thing I'll add to that is once you kind of have that number of like you have your team size where you know you're going to either be fairly close to hitting your SLAs or hitting your SLAs consistently. The other thing to think about is building in a little bit of a buffer, because I know for e-commerce companies, right around the holidays, things start to get really, really hectic. And so you always want to have a little bit of a buffer, which serves twofold. One, you can still hit your SLAs if your team starts to get a massive influx of tickets or a moderate influx of tickets. And then two, I've found at the last 2 companies I've worked at that when your team isn't working to like 100% capacity and you have a little bit of that buffer, it allows people to take a little bit more time and up that level of quality just a little bit. Because when people are rushing constantly day to day and don't have, and say maybe have like 5 less minutes to work on a ticket or 2 less minutes to work on a ticket, sometimes, and it's not always the case, but sometimes work can suffer a little bit. So having a little bit of an extra buffer, giving people a little bit of extra time can help level up that quality just a little bit.
I definitely agree with you. I think as my company is growing and scaling very quickly, I think we think a lot about what is our need as we go. You know, for us, we are an e-commerce business, so the holidays are fast approaching, and so those are the things that we're taking into consideration. Some other components for us is that layer of, you know, we definitely want to make sure that we are taking the time to invest in each member and make sure that they're getting the proper training that they're supposed to get. And so in the beginning, we understand and are more realistic with the fact that, you know, whatever the first couple of weeks are will be slower. And so we have to buffer in a little bit for that. And then, you know, once the associates get to a level in which they're really independent and kind of can go off their own, I think that is our measure of, you know, this is the timeline that it takes. And like, this is the goal for us. And after that, we hope to be like constantly investing in them so that that system of one helping another, for us, that buddy system has been very important so that we feel like there's this aspect of teamwork. And so that really helps a lot of our team feel supported, especially within the smaller units that they have. Great. And then just wanted to dive back here with our questions. We have a few here. First from Leandro, which is, can you talk about leadership versus put the team on board in CX, how each one explores leadership aspects?
When you say put the team on board in CX,
yeah. Leandro, could you expand on your question a little bit? I thought the same thing as well. Great. They said sure. I'm meaning about to convince the team about the meaning. Feel free to also jump in by video Q&A here so that we can kind of chat with you live. The best experience. And so it's, can you talk about leadership versus put the team on board in CX, how each one explores leadership aspects for the best experience? I'm gonna just move along to the next question. A little bit. Oh, okay, got it. Making sure the team are all on board. Got it.
Okay, I'll jump in to start this one. I think it's really hard. I found it's really hard for a team to buy in if they don't feel like they have any sort of like ownership over the team, and that doesn't mean that everyone needs to be a team leader or anything along those lines. I think what's really important for a customer experience team, because sometimes on customer support, especially frontline customer support, it can be seen as a thankless job because people just come in, ask questions, and that's it. And, you know, if you don't get a review or something, a lot of times you don't necessarily it's hard to sometimes see the value from like a frontline team member's perspective. And so I think what's important as a leadership team specifically is to let people's work and let the things that people do on a day-to-day basis, let that have impact in either a process or something along those lines. So for someone to see, oh, here's how I answered this questions, or I built out like a troubleshooting checklist or something, taking that like little work and expanding that to the rest of the team so that people can see that their work really does have impact on their teammates' work is a really good way to have people be more invested in the work they do on a day-to-day basis. And when you do that, it's kind of this cause and effect thing. And that's what I found really helpful, is when you can show someone that their work has significant impact outside of just that one customer experience, that's really important. Because if you think about it at a macro level, by doing a really good job in one case and building out a new process based off of, say, work that I did, that has an outsized impact on the rest of the team, because now we have this new process so that when, say, John comes up to a customer comes into John, asks a question. Now they have this new process where they can snap their fingers and be like, oh, Usama answered this before. There's a great process for this. And then say John reaches out to me and says, hey, I used what you built earlier. I used the same troubleshooting checklist that you did earlier. And now I answered that question in 2 minutes versus it would have taken me 15 minutes. So letting people know that the work they do is really important and has impact on the other members of the team. I think that's a great kind of first step. It's not everything you can do, but it's a great first step so that people feel like, one, they start to have more leadership on the team. They start to have more impact. And then the third thing is it might give them ways to level up in their own role. And I think that ability and clear expectations, but clear paths to having, or clear paths for people to level up is also really important.
Yeah, I would definitely second that. Something I've done with a fully in-house team that's about 40-ish people at Harry's is we would have, I forgot the word for these, but we would have sessions where all the managers would come together and talk about all their projects that we would need to do and prioritize them by like super high, medium, or like low level tasks that we could actually get some of the star players on the team to start working on so that they can kind of work their way up from smaller tasks that are out of the day-to-day operation to maybe some medium tasks to where they're now potentially liaisoning with other teams, because you know, we need help as leaders too, and we can't always be in every single room. And so our customer service associates or agents are actually very, very capable of going in the room and being that customer advocate. And so giving them that bit of exposure, I think has been really helpful. And it's helped me like bring forward to even senior leadership, like, hey, I want to create these new roles. I want to give folks on my team this opportunity to actually specialize as well. So yeah, they're rock stars in the day-to-day operations, but they're also learning data skills. They're also learning how to run insights and do deep dives and then showcase that to other teams to push forward kind of our ability to be in more places than just being siloed off in CX. And I think what happens a lot of CX teams really get siloed. And for me, that's like the anti-goal. And then also making sure to advocate for these folks as they're working on different processes, different projects in the room when they're there and when they're not there. So in stand-up, talking about a process that someone worked on, talking about a new set of reason codes or macros that someone spent 2-3 hours to create, that's going to basically help the entire team, and highlighting that stuff in either weekly emails or CX team meetings or cross-functional department meetings, and making sure that their names are heard, that creating that visibility and not only being an advocate for the customer, but being an advocate for the customer experience associates, I think has been the best way to really get the team on board, make sure that they feel that they're a part of something more than just like answering questions on the day-to-day.
Great. I'm just going to jump into our next discussion here and then answer the two Q&As that we have. And the next question right now is, how do you incentivize and motivate your team to build CX All-Stars?
Yeah, so this kind of builds off a little bit of what we were just talking about. I think the most important thing is giving clear paths to growth. And so if someone is on a team and is answering tickets every day, and that's kind of all they see as their future, it's really easy to just be not as bought in. And so I think what's been really helpful is two things. One, at Wistia, we very recently clearly defined, here's what you need to do to get to the next level. Here's how you get to the next stage in your career. And then as leaders, being very, very active in helping people work on the places that they're maybe not as good at. Now, if you have a really, really large team, it's harder to do that, which is one of the reasons why I also advocate for smaller teams and more personal one-to-one relationships with your direct reports. But by doing that and working with people on the areas where they may struggle or need more improvement, it lets them feel like you are invested in them. And that relationship is super important, because it's hard for someone to want to grow if they're manager isn't invested in their own growth. And so I think the gist of it, and I know we're starting to run out of time a little bit here, so I'll cut this a little bit short. But I think the gist of it is, as leaders, we need to be really invested in the growth of our team, because otherwise, if we're not invested in them, how are they supposed to invest in the company? And it's one thing to say that you're invested, but it's another thing to show that you're invested. And so as leaders, we need to make sure that we show that we're invested, that we do things and we take actions to, one, not only show them, but show the rest of the team and the rest of the company that, hey, as a CX org, we are really invested in our people. And here are very tangible examples of that.
Great. Just want to hop into the Q&A section now. And Adara asks, for customer success, we definitely jump in to help users as much as we can. How would you advise a team to strike the balance between the aspects of product use that could be the user's responsibility, self-service, versus the aspect that the company totally gives the support for?
Yeah, I can touch on this a little bit, at least the way that we handle it at AppQues is that with that, the first thing is providing the resources, and that's kind of making sure that you have the information so that somebody can do that on their own, as long as they have the ability. So as long as they have the time and the basic understanding, providing them with the tools and the resources. So that way, hopefully, if somebody is running into one of those problems, then you can say, okay, this is the documentation that's going to help you out with this part where you're getting first set up. And then once you're set up, you can follow this documentation and walk through that. And then having resources to kind of support them along the way. Along the same lines, though, you'll have some customers that simply don't have the time or don't have the team to be able to do it on their own. And then that's where you've got a couple of different paths that you can take. One of the common options is having a customer success manager. A lot of times that'll be good for providing the general strategy, making sure that they don't get blocked, or at least helping them out with ideas of what they should be doing. And then with some companies, you'll also have professional services, either in-house or out or externally, where you'd have a resource that they can go to, that where you can say, hey, I've got this amount of work that I need to do. I don't have the ability, this is from the customer perspective, where the customer doesn't have the ability to build out all of that on their own. And so then they use that external contractor, or they hire on those professional services to take them through that. As an interesting note as well, we do sometimes run into issues with that when people are doing integration. So when they're using AppQues, but they're using it with like an analytics partner or something like that. And in that case, it's a tricky balance, because we always try and be the whatever first contact is the person that takes it as far as they can. So sometimes we'll be jumping into other products and trying to give people basic information on how to do that. But once you reach the end of the information, then you just send it over to that particular company.
Great. Thank you so much. And then just want to touch upon Chelsea's question as well, which is, how do you address the I need to versus the I get to mentality in customer support? For example, encouraging team members to see customer service as an opportunity to be a customer advocate / voice of the customer.
I can jump right into this one. Actually, I think this is kind of similar to how we talked about leadership in the previous 2 questions or something like that ago. Making sure that our team members get a chance to kind of be in the rooms where they can advocate to other departments on behalf of our customers. Like, our associates are going to be the ones who know the most of the customers, or they have the most intimate conversations with the customers. They go through the emotional ups and downs. And so what they do is they bring a lot of the storytelling to the room that a lot of times doesn't happen, because you're working with teams that are like, I want data, and I need a dashboard, and I need like a real mathematical proof to understand why I should prioritize like fixing this thing when I have these other projects to balance. And so what I've done in the past is like help to work with like a really strong associate who's been working either on a process or on identifying a trend to help them get the story right. They know that really well, and then help them put together all the data that they would need to create those talking points so that they have these opportunities to liaise with folks outside of the CX team. And I think that really helps that with that mentality of like, I need to versus I get to, because they kind of get to not only see because I told them to, because I told them about it, or see because it was at a really big like all hands meeting, but actually be in the room where the conversations are happening and ask the questions and tell the story from the customer's point of view and have their voice being heard. And they get to see a different, I guess, part of CX for their career and their own growth and trajectory.
Yeah, I definitely agree for us as well. Our CX team members are the first ones who have those kinds of very intimate conversations with the customers, and they know us. And so we do lean on a lot of their anecdotal, stories that they have. And for us, with the structure of how we run our weeklies, is we have one meeting a week where we just say like, hey, what's going on? What is the voice of the customer this week? What's going on? What are new innovations that we need to incorporate down the road? And so we compile all that feedback and just kind of try to match that up with the metrics that we have with our data. And so we say like, okay, yeah, we see that, this is actually, harming, these aspects for us. And so we need to look into it a little bit further. And so those things usually are, we relay that back to our teams. And so they realize that their interaction with the customer on it, whether it's a 3-minute ticket that they have, actually is so important to the grand scheme of things. And so we try to instill that for us as well.
And the last thing I'll add there is kind of on the theme that I've been talking about, is for those frontline team members to actually see change in whether it be the product or anything along those lines. That is one of the most powerful things that you can help facilitate for them. Because if someone comes in and sees, or a customer comes in and the team member identifies a bug that no one else in the company knows, if we go from, oh, this bug that we had no idea was a thing is a little bit more important, and then say it impacts a company's a company's product pretty significantly. If we can get in less than 24 hours, say in 4 hours, that bug solved, and that team member to say, oh, I identified this bug, I brought this to product, and say my manager or someone else on the team helped advocate for me to get this change, that is really important, because that again brings into this the idea, oh, my work is more important than just answering a customer's question. So seeing that cause and effect of, I identified a bug, I solved this really big pain point for a customer, that's super important. And then also your support through that entire process is really important too, because then it builds more of a team culture where, oh, it's not just me, it's my coworkers think this is really important. My coworker is going to advocate for me when they see an issue. And that is really important to help people say, oh, this work is really, sorry, I said important a bunch of times, but that's kind of the gist of it.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I completely agree as well. We are just about time in a couple of minutes, and I do want to touch upon our last QA in the chat right now from Nikki. Nikki says, we lean on our knowledge base, help articles, use cases, and also our support team and the benefit of their extended hours of operation. Our goal is to empower them to navigate and feel comfortable in the platform. Oh, less of a question, but yes, just to reiterate, leaning on the knowledge base and also the support team and the benefit of the hours. And yes, agree that the goal is to empower and navigate and feel comfortable and what, where they're doing in their day-to-day. Thank you so much for your feedback here. As we have just a few minutes, I guess we have time for really one more question. And so the next question is, what does basic documentation consist of and why it's so important?
I think that we just touch on that couple of times in a couple of different ways, but it's one of those things where I feel like with documentation you can't emphasize that enough. So it's kind of like every single time that you can, it's a good thing to bring up. And one of the things I also like kind of with this particular wording is that sometimes it's also good to keep in mind that it's basic documentation. That's kind of like your starting point and the thing that you should always return to. It's like, it's good to have the complex stuff. It's good to have video walkthroughs, kind of these training courses and that sort of stuff. But you do always want to make sure that you've got that really simple stuff that's answering specific questions and is easy to update and is easy to share with customers.
For us, we do a lot less of sharing documentation with customers, but we put it in our app. And so we put a lot of resources in our app, and we share information and insights with the teams that are managing kind of our internal knowledge base. But for us as well, we have multiple wikis that our team internally works with. So our folks over in El Salvador and the Philippines, we've built out in record time, it feels like, multiple pages and multiple videos of just like resources and information, and are constantly updating that. We did fall into the trap of having too much documentation, where you just have several different pages of documentation of one particular incident, and you never actually retire some of the information. And so I think that's something to be mindful of, that when you are creating all this documentation, you're writing everything down, that's awesome, but make sure to archive something or date it and link the new document or the most updated document in some of those old documents, so that you have the most up-to-date information. You're not giving or sharing outdated information, or you're not putting that stuff in your wiki that is either internal or passing it along to, I don't know, like an engineering or design team to then put in the app.
Yeah, and then I think it's kind of a general question, but when I think of basic documentation in general, the first question that comes up is, what does someone need to do their job effectively? And like, that is the definition of basic documentation. Everything else is kind of a little bit of an excess, and you can dive deeper in certain topics here and there. But as far as basic documentation goes, you want like one of your team members to be able to jump in, go find what they need to understand how to go through the day-to-day. Maybe it's not specific answers on every question, but it's, okay, where do I go to find the correct answers? And like, clearly laying those things out will, one, help people do their jobs effectively. Two, it makes onboarding way easier as well. But like, really being able to answer that, making sure that your documentation answers that question of, what does someone need to do their job effectively? If you can do that, then I think you've got your basic documentation checked off.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, it looks like we have just a couple minutes left. I do want to touch upon this last question. I think we have been kind of chatting upon it. It's how to implement effective QA to level up your support team.
Yeah, I guess I can touch on that kind of quickly as far as how we're doing it at AppQs. So I do a bit of review, but one of the big things that we've been doing is peer review that's consistent for all tickets. And so any of the tools that you can find is probably going to be a good tool. We use Klaus over at AppQs. And the thing that I really like about it is that it gives an easy way for any of the team members to provide feedback on any of the other tickets. And so that means that as a manager, I'm not going in and reviewing everybody's responses and everybody's and kind of like how they're responding, the information that they're providing, and all that sort of stuff. It's everybody that's doing that. And that's really great from a couple of perspectives, because it makes it so that people can help out their fellow team members, but it also means that when you're reviewing, you can also learn. So you might be checking out somebody else's ticket, and it might not be like, hey, you can improve this. It might be like, oh my God, I love that response. I'm totally going to use that for the next time that this comes up with a customer.
Amazing. Well, we are just under a minute left here. Thank you so much to everybody for tuning in today. This was an absolutely great session. I don't know about you. I was like over here jotting down so many notes, but we have some more awesome content coming up. So be sure to click on agenda at the top of your screen to check it out. And we'll see you all super soon. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.